Hey guys, today's story is about a crappy DM and their crappy homebrew system. So, 15 years ago, I was invited to a session that was DM'd by a friend, and it was both a homebrew setting and system. There was also 3 other players. The DM started by explaining a little bit about their setting, which was quite interesting. But we didn't get an info dump, it was just basic stuff. And I don't really remember too much about the world, but it was only a high-level overview. And when we got into character creation, all the info for the system was wrote down, by hand, in notebooks. The system had very simplistic stats, with 1 representing all physical prowess, 1 being responsible for mind, and 1 for being magical things. There was also a very extensive skill selection, with hundreds of skills to choose from, and they were very detailed. I decided that I wanted to be a scholar, who would know many languages and be well versed in many of those mind-related things. The DM told us that we didn't have to build towards combat, as going through encounters with RP was also a possibility. And obviously, after character creation, we started. The party entered the city, which was described as big, sprawling, and the capital of an entire country. The DM mentioned that there was a notification board in the city center. Sure, it was cliché, but I decided to take a plot hook and roll with it. I said that I was going towards the city center to read the board and look for a job for us. And the DM said that it would take me about 45 minutes to get there. I asked others to go with me, but they wanted to do other things, so everyone split up to do their own thing. 1 went to order food in a nearby tavern, another went to a store to do a little bit of shopping, and the last one decided that he wanted to roleplay as a bard and try to hit on a few NPCs. So I just went off to go get a job and said I'd be back. And while my character was going to the center, the DM started RPing all the interactions with the other players. Everything that they did had instant feedback, even if the action should take some time, such as ordering food. All the things that the other players did were pretty mundane, none of which furthered the plot, or even finding a single plot hook. They were just enjoying their time doing mundane things, each of them in order, while nothing interesting happened to me. More than 2 hours of real-life time went by until my 45-minute wait ended, and I reached the board. I said that I was looking for some job offer that would catch my eye, and the DM said, "You can't read, so you just stare at it." I've pointed out how I'm very educated. I know multiple languages, history, science, and math. But apparently, there was a skill to read and write between the hundreds of skills that he presented us, and I didn't take it. The DM checked our characters beforehand and never said anything, even when I explained my scholar concept. He never said anything 2 hours earlier when I told him that my intention was to read the board. He only mentioned it when I got there. We argued a bit, and he said that most people in his world couldn't read, which should be obvious. I've only played D&D before, which he knew, where you were assumed to know how to read if you knew a given language, so it wasn't that obvious for me. So I asked what the point of the notice board in cities was if no one could in fact read them, to which I didn't really get an answer. So I asked if I could just drop one of my less useful knowledge skills in lieu of reading, since I didn't know that it was even a skill. And my character surely wouldn't walk for 45 minutes to try to read something when they couldn't read. My character was also very intelligent, who tended to have his nose inside of books, as per his backstory. But the answer was a no. He said that when character creation was done, then it's done. Which I would normally agree with, but this was a homebrew system that I knew nothing about. But I didn't fight over it. and just decided to roll with it. So I said that my character asks around to try to find someone to read the board for them. To which the DM replied,
"Sure. It'll take you 30 minutes to find such a person."
I was taken aback that it would take me so much time to try to find someone, and asked if there was a library nearby, or a board keeper, or a guard that takes care of the board who would be able to help me read it. But he said that no one that would obviously be able to read was nearby, and I would have to look for 30 minutes. I agreed because I really had no better idea how to move the plot forward, and I didn't know in character if the other party members could read. And even if they could, I was a 45-minute walk away from them, and didn't know their exact locations. So the DM proceeded to RP with the other players about useless stuff. I honestly don't remember much from what the other players were doing, as I started to zone out, since there was almost no involvement of my character. And after another 2 real hours, it was my turn again.
"You found a noble that can read passing by,"
said the DM. I RP'd, asking the noble very nicely to help me, using the most eloquent and well-behaved way of speech. There was no rules for this, and the DM just said,
"The noble won't speak with you, peasant," and goes away.
I was a scholar, and I dressed quite well, but apparently, I was a total peasant anyway. And so, I decided to take another approach. I took a few of the newest-looking posts from the board, and decided to look for a library, university, or other such buildings where I should be able to find non-nobles who could read, and ask them to read the notices for me so that we could finally start doing something constructive. But alas, another 30-minute search awaited me, so 2 real-life hours later, I was stopped by 2 guards. They told me that I was seen stealing notices from the notice board, and as such, I was now under arrest. I attempted to explain to them that I only borrowed the cards in order to get them to be read, and that I intended to post them back. They had none of it. There was no rules to persuade, or anything, and as they approached me to arrest me, I decided to try to run away, and my body was low since all of my points went into mind. So there wasn't even any rules for my attempt to run away. I got knocked out.
But back to the other players, there was RP for most of the rest of the session. Ain't that fun? Some 90 minutes later of real life, I woke up in a cell. And I would be in court in 2 days, where they would probably decide my hand would be cut off for the crime of thievery. And that was the end of the session. I never went back for another, and I assume that my character lost their hand for taking a few pieces of paper, because he was smart, but not smart enough to know the laws, or anything about the culture of this homebrew land, or how to read. Well guys, this DM is pretty trashy as a DM. As the OP said, I can understand making character choices permanent, but in the case of a new player, or especially some crap-ass homebrew system with some craphead who thinks he's the next scary Gygax, you should let a player fix his blatant screw-ups on their sheet. Especially when the whole character idea is that they are an educated individual whose entire shtick is that they are, in fact, educated. And then we have the fact that through 6 hours of real-life time, not a single whiff, hair, or trace of a plot hook was to be found. I question if this guy even had a single neuron working towards coming up with a plot and was just too preoccupied with doing the lol random RP. And then we also have the fact that this DM apparently had some sort of Hammurabi's code in place for the setting, which apparently equated to meaning that taking a piece of paper off a bounty board, which tend to have multiple postings for the same type of thing, for people to take if they're interested, resulted in the character's hand being lopped off.
That's just ridiculous, and quite frankly, I think it might have even been a petty jab at the OP. So yeah, with all this being taken into account, the only thing I can say to the OP is just, why did you stay 6 hours? I doubt I would have lasted 1. I'm there to play a game, not waste my time with my thumb up my bum. But yeah, that's the end of this one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and as always, stay safe, stay sane, stay out of crappy games by crappy DMs like this, and have a good one.